Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Dr. Hank Show. And oh my goodness, do we have some big happy surprises for you today and an amazing guest. And you know what we do here? We help you to become your greatest possibility, and we help you to have your dreams come true. And speaking of dreams coming true, our guest is Sandee Sgarlata. Sandee, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hank. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, you are just amazing. I mean, besides writing two bestsellers, and of course, right up my alley with one of those being Happiness Solved, and how exciting that is. But you really have been, you are an international figure skating coach. You have a gold medal in skating. I mean, that is just amazing, and congratulations to you. And what I love is how authentic you are. And you shared with me in 1990 you hit rock bottom. So we want to hear how you go from hitting rock bottom to being a gold medalist, or whatever. Being happy really is the key, as I know you change, as you teach. And then I know you have a new book coming out in the largest series ever in the history of the world with Les Brown. And so with all that, where do you want to start?
I don't know. You know, my book, the Happiness Solved, Climbing 100 Steps. Okay. The Climbing 100 Steps portion is kind of like a mini memoir where I have 4 chapters where I talk about my story and try to, you know, I was authentic as I could possibly be.
Yeah.
Keeping in mind there's other people in my life that I can't talk about, you know, stuff like that. I have a son that's in college, so, you know, I had to tread a little lightly. And then the Happiness Solved is the self-help portion of it, the self-improvement portion. And then there's also a workbook in the back of it where people can do the exercises that I recommend.
Yeah.
But the Climbing 100 Steps, it's kind of a metaphor, but it was also, because some people say, oh my gosh, is there 100 steps to being happy? There's not, thankfully. It's just when I was growing up, we lived on the water on the Severn River outside of Annapolis. And there was 100 steps that led from the river dock all the way up to the house. And I always found it to be, I was so happy when I was climbing these 100 steps. And it was, you know, the movie Rocky was big then. And, you know, you're climbing 100 steps and you're hearing this, you know, da, 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 you know, like Rocky just climbing those steps. And it was just a happy place for me.
Yeah, awesome. I get it.
And then one day when I was 12 years old, it was actually 2 weeks before my 13th birthday, me and my girlfriend, I was called home early. I was brought home by boat because it was quicker. Yeah. And me and my girlfriend, we run up the steps, we're all happy. And my father greeted us at the door. And I learned that my older brother had tragically died while serving in the US Army. And he was only 19 years old. And so my whole life just came crumbling down. Wow. And so 12 years later is when I hit rock bottom.
Wow.
And my whole life has just been about wanting to get back to that place that I felt when I was 12 going on 13 and climbing the 100 steps.
Oh, beautiful. I love that.
So yeah, so that's kind of how that all evolved. And everything that I talk about in my book is the way that I've lived my life since I hit rock bottom in 1990, 32 years ago, over almost 33 years now. And everything I talk about in my book is I walk the talk. Like, this is how I live my life.
Yeah, cool.
Every single day. And it's a journey, not a destination.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I ask how old were you when you got your gold medal?
So in ice skating and figure skating, it's kind of, I always explain it. I use the analogy or compare it to karate. Or taekwondo, where you've got your belts. So in figure skating, you have your levels. And so the gold medal is the top level that you reach, and you pass a test, and they literally give you a gold medal from the United States Figure Skating Association.
Wow.
And so it's kind of like having your black belt in karate. So when I was a competitive figure skater in my youth, I never made it out of regionals. Things were very, very different back then.
Yeah.
That was when you had to do the figure eights, right?
Yeah.
And I was a little attention deficit. So to have a 12, 13, 14-year-old little girl go around circles for an hour was just like,
Yeah.
it
Right.
was just,
Right.
so
Yeah.
that was what really kept me from going very far in the figure skating world, because you had to compete in both figures and in
Got it.
your freestyle.
Got it.
So later in life, in my late 20s, when I was coaching skating, I took up ice dancing, and I was 34 years old when I achieved my gold medal in ice dancing, which was
Oh
a
my.
very, very difficult feat to
Oh
accomplish.
my gosh, that's fantastic. Congratulations. And just
Thank you.
amazing. Really got 2 gold medals then,
Right.
you're a little girl and then there. So share with us that, everybody, all of us have our story, and we have, the passing of loved ones, we have the challenges, the illnesses, all of that. And I think we'd all like to hear on, what would you say, like on the top couple of things that you do where you were able to feel like you were going up those 100 stairs again as a child, so happy?
So I think, I get asked this question a lot,
Yeah.
and it really boils down to shifting your perspective
Mhm.
around every situation. With me, because I still have anxiety, I still have PTSD. So for me, it starts with the breathing exercises, because you have to calm your heart rate down, you have to reduce your anxiety, and the quickest way to do that is with deep breathing.
Yeah.
And it's just, as many deep breaths as you need.
Yeah.
And then I focus on gratitude.
Mm.
Gratitude is so, so important.
Yeah.
Now, I say that with the fact that you have to go through the healing process first with whatever it is that you're dealing with. So
Yeah.
it took me many years of therapy to learn how to heal and grieve the death of my brother, because I never did.
Right.
So you have to deal with those big things first.
Yeah.
And then when it shows its ugly head, and things pop up, then you can do the deep breathing and focus on gratitude, and get to a place where you're able to shift your perspective and open your eyes up, because there's always another way to see every single situation.
Oh boy. Yeah, I just love that. And a couple things that's interesting, brought up breathing, that I just completed a video on the 3 different types of breaths, and I've invested thousands of dollars on breathing. And people say to me, Dr. Hank, like, you might be smart in some stuff, but are you stupid or something? We all know how to breathe, but there is a technique to breathing. And one of them is that deep breathing. And the way I like looking at that is, it's a connection to God, the fastest way. In fact, the word breath, I'm also an ordained minister, and the word breath actually, the word spirit in the Bible actually means breath. And it's a fastest way for us to connect with our higher power. So I love that you do the breath on the breath. And then the second one on gratitude, and I love appreciation, but you were saying in all of that in essence, you have to face it. And so I like using fear, because fear is just really a misconception of what we're observing and thinking, like you say, changing your perspective. And fear is face everything and rise. That's exactly what you're doing, is facing everything and rising. So
I love that. Yes.
yeah, so that's beautiful. And so any other thoughts? I'd love to, just these 100 steps. I think everybody can just visualize as, a child
Yeah.
and being happy in there. I was at a place in Wisconsin where we would go in the summer, called Silver Lake, and same type of thing. There were steps. I don't know how many steps there were, but there were a lot. I never counted them. But I just love going back to just having these memories. We all really have wonderful memories, but most of us I think about what didn't, play out the way that we wanted to, and then we play that story, and it's a way of changing stories. So, other things you'd like to share with us on how to get to that happiness point, or anything else? Maybe a little about your book too.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. Before that, I just want to throw in one more thing about the
yeah,
breathing. You say that people say that we know how to breathe. Well,
yeah.
we all thought we knew how to wash our hands. And then COVID hit. And what are we doing now? We're just learning how to really wash our hands. So there is more to it.
There you go. Yeah, there's more to it. It's not just being born, being slapped on the butt,
Right,
and there
right.
you go.
So yeah, so it's interesting. So my new book that's coming out, where you mentioned when you were talking about the intro,
Yeah.
I'm a co-author, and
Uh-huh.
it is the largest series book in the world. So
That's,
I'm in book number 17,
that's,
and my chapter is called Happiness Solved: Change Your Perspective, Change Your Life.
uh,
So I go into a really more of a deep dive. I mean, in my book, Happiness Solved: Climbing 100 Steps, I do have a full chapter devoted to perspective.
uh-huh.
Um, it's just I wanted to elaborate on it even more,
Yeah.
because there's so many things that people don't understand about shifting your perspective.
Yeah.
And simply put, our perspective is the way we see the world.
Yeah.
But what happens is the way we see the world is also influenced by our perception, and our perception is what is based on our senses.
Yeah.
Touch, smell, hearing. All of those are 5 senses.
Yeah.
And so the reason why it's so important to learn how to shift your perspective is because your perspectives becomes your beliefs, right? This is the way you see the world. You believe it.
Yeah.
Those beliefs turn into your reality.
Right.
And so if you learn to shift your perspective, you can literally change your life,
Yeah.
because the way things are today doesn't mean they always have to be this way. The way I think today doesn't have to stay this way. I can change the way I'm thinking.
Yeah. And there's such freedom in that, Sandee,
Oh,
to
so
realize
much
that
freedom.
we can just change our thoughts about, a person, about our job, about your spouse, your kid, whatever. It's just a matter of changing that thought. And do you have a way to help improve people's thinking then? Do you have something you could share with us on what's a good technique to change that perspective?
Yeah. So,
Of course you do.
so often, and I think when you were a guest on my podcast,
Yeah.
you brought up how many thoughts we have a day and what percentage of those thoughts are negative.
Right.
And it's a matter of catching yourself in that. And there's a few questions you can ask yourself. One, which I think is like the $1 million question, is it true?
Yeah. Ooh.
Is it true?
Yeah.
So often our brains will immediately, the first reaction is always going to be emotional.
Yeah.
And our first reaction is a lot of times it's going to be more negative. So instead of focusing on what that person is doing wrong, why don't you focus on what they're doing right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, they made that mistake. Yeah, well, does that mean they're a horrible person? No.
Yeah.
Instead of focusing on the negatives, focus on the positives.
Yeah. Yeah. There's those 60,000 thoughts a day that we have, and 80% of those thoughts are unwanted or negative thoughts. And then the real kicker on it is 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday, which means we get the same tomorrow.
I mean, it's just that domino effect.
Yeah.
So when you have that negative thought, and maybe let's just talk about limiting beliefs, because we all have limiting beliefs.
Sure.
And that's when you want to say, is it true?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is it true? In the chapter, I talk about how that in the chapter of the Change book series,
Mm-hmm.
I talk about how when I was 10 or 11 years old, I was in an art class, and I loved art. I'm a very creative person.
Awesome.
I'm a writer. My first book was a novel. right? I'm a
Oh,
very creative person.
awesome.
And I loved this piece of art. And I took it to the teacher. I was in the fifth grade. I think I was like 10 or 11. I was a young fifth grader. So I always have trouble remembering because my
Yeah.
son was he was always older for his grade. So I just forget.
I get it.
Anyway, so I take this piece of art to the art teacher and she looked at me and she goes, "That's terrible." Who says that to a 10-year-old? Right? I mean, art is subjective. Well, maybe you don't like it, but
Yeah.
I liked it and I thought it was beautiful and blah, blah, blah. But what happened is I spent the next few decades thinking that I'm terrible at art. It affected
Wow.
so many things because that was my teacher. I looked up to her.
Yeah.
So is it true? Am I terrible at art? No. Am I Picasso? No. But
Yeah.
and the only reason why I haven't taken an art class is just because I don't have time to really devote to it, but it's on my list of things to do.
Yeah.
At some point when I have a couple of extra hours a week, I am going to take a class and I am going to start painting. And I just can't wait to see what things I create because
Awesome.
I held on to that belief for so many years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why, we have to be so careful when we're talking to other people with what you say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I just love that. I mean, like this idea about, is it true? That question will help awaken you to realize that, well, let's take a look at that. It's just this one teacher, and your belief now, Sandee, on the way that you said, I'm a very creative person. You believe that, and that's all you need.
That's right.
Done on you as you believe. And so, and it's this confidence and raised confidence in yourself, and a great way. And it's all about your thoughts. Confidence isn't like something that you can buy and upgrade or whatever. That it's not like a car. It's about what I'm thinking.
That's right.
And then your beliefs, and the same with your beliefs. So I just love that. Yeah, I'm very creative, and indeed you are. So you did good work. That shows on. Wow, rock bottom, and just in that, on rock bottom, not an artist, to where, hey, I'm really creative.
That's right. Well, and confidence is something that you build upon. Confidence isn't something that everybody's born with.
Right.
It's something you have to build upon. And I do work with some very elite ice dancers right now.
Oh.
And I've had to work with I do work with athletes on confidence because, believe it or not, that is the biggest issue in athletic performance is confidence. And no matter, Rafa, I'm a huge tennis fanatic. Like I'm obsessed with tennis.
Yeah.
So like Rafa Nadal, Novak Djokovic, Roger Federer, three of the greatest tennis players we will ever see probably in our lifetime.
Right.
They still have issues. They still have to work on confidence. They
Yeah.
They have to get out there because in tennis, I like to use that because it's points, like you have to stay focused every single point.
Right.
It's not even like the game or it's every single point. You have to break it down. So when they make an unforced error or they lose a point, you can watch them and you can see them, the self-talk and what they do to get themselves back. To bring that confidence back so that they can get out and get that next point.
Yeah, what a great point. And, and what it is you've described it in a couple of ways on like this, we use our senses. And so we experience, a double fault or whatever in tennis.
Right.
And that gets us down. And it's a matter of, you really have to overcome. And so all of us need to overcome the experiences we've had, the opinion of other people, I call it the God with a small g, the God of other people's opinion, and a people pleaser. And that, but we don't even realize it. And that's why your magical question, is it true, is so good, because we just, we believed it from the time we heard it, that it just becomes part of who we think we are. People say, oh, I'm a night person, or I'm not good with names, or whatever. You can be whatever you want to call
That's
yourself.
right.
And why not just call yourself, hey, I'm great with names, and instead of a people pleaser, I'm a God pleaser, and just
Right.
align with God and to be on that. So I love that. Yeah, that's kind of us buying into what is. So what's
Mhm.
going on right now? And it's really old history, because as you were sharing, it's really our attitude about, it's our thoughts that create energy, that creates matter. So that's why
Right.
thoughts become things. And so you have helped us so much to awaken to what are we thinking, and
What are
how
we
to be able
thinking?
to do that. Yeah, and to gain confidence. That's great. Yeah, I can think of all kinds of things. Just
Well,
yesterday at the end of golf, on how they were saying there's one player, one of the best players in the world. Oh, he lost confidence because he hit that. And sure
yeah.
enough, he did lose confidence. Had a terrible next ball.
And it's simple,
Yeah,
but it's not easy.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
here, I work with elite athletes. I also play tennis. I
Yeah.
started playing tennis just a few years ago, then was injured for a few years. So I'm back. I'm
You're
back out on the tennis
amazing.
court. But let me tell you
Oh,
something. When I'm playing,
yeah,
it's not easy.
yeah,
It's not. And I think of, because I find myself, after losing a few points, I don't even practice what I'm preaching, because it's
yeah.
not, it's simple, but it's not easy. So I'm out there on the tennis court. I'm like, come on, like, not easy.
Yeah, yeah. I
It's
just
a
did yoga
practice.
this morning, and an hour of yoga, and in this class, and the hot yoga, and it's like, ooh, doggies, but I feel great afterwards.
Yeah.
And
But you still have to work on it. And it's just
yeah,
such a practice. You have to practice at being
yeah,
happy. You practice switching negative thoughts to positive ones. It's all about practice, just like you're practicing for a marathon, or a doctor
yeah.
that's practicing medicine. You
Right.
know, we happiness is a practice.
Oh, that's beautiful. I
So
love
maybe I'm a
that.
happiness practitioner.
Hey, there you go. I like that. I like that. Yeah. I wrote a book, The Happiest Man in the World, and that also I included some of my life in there. And man, my sister-in-law was really mad at me, and because I kind of laid it out there. So you were smart in your book on that. You didn't quite say everything.
No, I didn't.
But I
My
just
ex-husband is thanking me. Yes.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's fun. So, in what would you say then for us to be happy? That what are just some things that you either do, or you like thoughts on for us to be happy? Because really, the name of the game, our soul's prize of all prizes, is joy or happiness.
Mhm.
And so, how can you help us, Sandy, to be a little bit happier right now?
Well, of course, gratitude, because things can always be worse. Things can always be worse. So, you're stressed out, your day isn't going as well. You can always press that reset button, just like you see, the Staples commercial, that button, there's
Yeah.
press the reset button, and you
Yeah.
can reset your day at any moment. And it's also about just appreciating all the little things.
Yeah.
Take time, like my dog comes in every day around 4:30, 5 o'clock, and
Mm.
he'll start throwing the ball at my feet. I've got a 10-pound Yorkie poo named Buster, and he thinks he's training for the ball catching Olympics in the 10-pound category, because he's obsessed with playing ball.
Yeah.
And at first, I'd be like, come on, I'm not done. But then it was like, stop, just stop, and find the joy in that, like
Yeah.
if your kids are tugging on you, take a break,
Yeah.
spend time with your children, spend time with your loved ones.
Mm.
Every day truly is a gift.
Yeah.
And life is so short. I mean, we all have lost people.
Yeah.
Life is so short.
Yeah. For
you
sure.
know my and I'll tell a quick tragic story
Sure.
that I talk about in my book, because I feel like it really sums up how life can be taken from us.
Yeah.
So my ex-husband and I, we were divorced,
Mhm.
and we had shared custody. It was an amicable divorce by all means.
Great.
And there was one night he had had some drinks. He was pulling into McDonald's to get a cheeseburger. A motorcycle came flying around the corner. They clipped. Both people died that were on the motorcycle.
Wow.
This happened 2 weeks after my son turned 13. Now, remember, my brother died 2 weeks 2 weeks before I turned 13.
Got
This
it.
accident happened 2 weeks after my son turned 13.
Wow.
A year later, my ex-husband went to prison for 7 years. So talk about somebody sitting in prison who lost everything. He was a very successful lawyer. He lost 7 years with his little boy.
Wow. I know.
When he got out of prison in December, my son is 21, junior in college. He's now going into a senior. He starts this week. He's a senior in college. He turns 22 in early September. And so, life is short, and we don't know, like, that could have happened to anybody. Yes, you don't drink and drive, but people have 2 drinks. And if you're over the legal limit and you're in an accident and somebody dies, your life is over. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Doesn't matter. Life can be taken from you. You can be on the motorcycle or in the car. You can be on either end of that equation.
Right. Right.
Whatever happens, life is so short that you need to really take time to just appreciate every single day.
Yeah.
Stop wasting your life on this, on your phone.
All right.
Go
And
for a
worrying
walk.
about, and in fact,
Yeah.
80% of the thought, I'm worrying about stuff that most of the things we worry about don't ever happen.
They don't.
And we've always, there's only a couple of instances that in my coaching where I've said, you've always had a roof over your head. You've always had a meal. And one person said, well, I actually haven't had a roof over my head all the time. And there was a time, for 6 months or whatever. But, the fact is that, hey, everything is a blessing, and that, to enjoy this present moment. And we certainly have enjoyed all of these moments with you and your wisdom, Sandee, and the happiness.
Thank you, Dr. Hank.
Coach, you're just so precious, and we love stories like that. So sharing your stories on how really to bring it home to us, and maybe we just say, hey, I want to be happier, and for us to just ask that I'd like to be happier now. And then your magical question, is it true? Because most of the things that we have, really everything, we make our own truth about any and everything. So why not make it on our side? And with that, any last comments, stories you'd like to share with us?
Well, you just said, you make up the truth about yourself. And so often, we have a situation that happens, we have the story we make up about it, and then we have our reaction. And it's like, something happens, you have a choice as to how you're going to, of that story you're going to make up in your mind about it. And so think wisely about the stories that you're telling yourself, and ask yourself, are they true? Because we cause ourselves so much grief. Someone blows you off in the store, they don't, and you're like, oh, can you believe it? They didn't even say hello to me. And you spend, days, hours, whatever, upset, when it's like, well, maybe they didn't see you. Maybe they're having a really bad day and they just don't. And that's, what? Because when you do that, you're making it about you, and it's not about you.
Right. Absolutely. That's for sure. You're such a great storyteller. Could you just share with us one more story?
You want another story? Okay. All right. So let's see here. All right. Let me talk about me hitting rock bottom, because that's a story that I, I wasn't going to include that in my book.
Yeah.
And then I realized that if I didn't include it, I would not be the authentic person that I want to show up as.
Right.
So I never dealt with my brother's death. Mm-hmm. And when my brother died, I made up a couple of stories about that. One, because I was so happy when I found out that he died, I made up a story that I couldn't possibly be happy, because if I was happy, then bad things were going to happen to me.
Yeah. Ooh.
Like, how crazy is that? But as a 12, 13-year-old little girl,
Yeah.
I equated it. Oh my gosh, I was happy and something really awful happened. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't allow happiness in my life for many years.
Wow.
That was the PTSD that I didn't understand. I didn't know that that's PTSD.
Yeah.
The other story that I made up was that I just refused to admit that he even died because I never grieved it.
Mm.
So I made up the story that he was in the witness protection program, or that he was, a spy and that he couldn't come home, or, now granted, that was probably a pretty decent healing mechanism for a
Yeah.
kid.
Right.
Because I wasn't, back in the day, like we didn't have therapy. We didn't,
Right.
so, and of course today I know that he's not coming back.
Right.
And once or twice a year, the really cool thing is I have a dream
Mm.
that he shows up at the front door, and I open up the door and there's my brother.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we hug and we have amazing conversations that I never even remember. But it's kind of like a gift that
Yeah.
once or twice a year he visits me in my dreams.
That's
And it's
awesome.
pretty cool. So
Yeah.
what happened was I was in my early 20s and I was introduced to cocaine, and I had never used drugs, other than, the occasional marijuana in high school or whatever. But I was never going to use drugs. And so
Right.
I ended up hitting rock bottom with cocaine abuse.
Yeah.
And I went into an outpatient program. But what I didn't realize was the level that I had reached in the cocaine abuse was that I would do cocaine until 5 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And I would lay in bed and my heart would be racing and I wanted to die. And I would ask for forgiveness of my sins. I was raised Catholic, and that you were
Yeah.
told that you're supposed to do that. So I would ask for forgiveness of my sins because I did not think I was going to wake up, and I didn't want to wake up. I
Yeah.
was hoping. So I reached that level. Like, I never attempted suicide, but I didn't want to live.
Yeah.
I was, and that, when I think back on that, it's like, whoa,
Wow.
that's the level that it reached for me, is that and thank goodness, because I could have, at any moment, I could have died from a bad batch of cocaine.
Right. Right.
So that was the big turning point in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that, because it's who I am today.
Yeah.
It
Exactly.
put me on this path of being obsessed with self-improvement,
Yeah.
And
How
so,
beautiful. Beautiful. Beautiful.
yeah.
And I love that. And if I can on that, um, so there really, death is a misunderstanding, and we just transitioned back into the non-physical, and it's back to as we believe. So if I think they're gone, so I'll give you an example. I shared with you that I do yoga, that my
Yeah, that's great.
mother transitioned 15 years ago or whatever, and and we had a very good relationship together. But now we have even a better one, because she no longer has resistant thoughts. Those 80% of those thoughts, no more of those negative, unwanted thoughts. So she's angelic, if you will. And so when I do, and she loved yoga. So when she actually passed away, I started doing yoga, and I could feel her presence. So I do yoga with my mother 6 days a week now.
Wow.
So this idea about coming into your dreams, how beautiful that he is alive and real and loves you, will always be there. And as we just invite these people in, they can guide us and love us. And yeah, we can't see them, but we can feel their presence. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and so that's so beautiful with your relationship with your brother that you have now too, and that he comes and visits you.
He does.
Oh man.
Yeah, I love it. I just love it. Yeah.
Well, Sandee Sgarlata, you are amazing. Best-selling author. Get her new book. When will your new book be out?
You're only going to be like, yeah, the change. You have to go to my website, sandeesgarlata.com, and
Okay.
you can order it through me directly, because
Yeah.
there's 20 authors.
Got it.
You can't put each one out on Amazon,
Yeah,
and these
got it.
books that are co-authored. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's
Not some of them you can, for this particular one.
yeah.
But my
Sandee
other book can be
Sgarlata.
on, my other
Yeah.
book is on Amazon.
That's beautiful. And just for those of you that are maybe listening to this, Sandee is Sandee, and then Sgarlata is
Sgarlata.
Sgarlata and .com. And so, Sandee, we thank you so much for being on with us today. That you just really have uplifted all of us. I just love those stories, and I think it's just a planet of all of us on that happiness that we can achieve, and even better happiness than those 100 steps that we walked up as a child. That we can have it, and we can have it all. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Dr. Hank, thank you.
You're a blessing. All of you, bless you. And know that Sandee and I both know how to give you happiness. So go get it. Love you all. Bye-bye.